As we discuss link aggregation control protocol as it relates to vSphere distributed switches, I want you to understand a couple of things. First thing I want you to understand is that I'm only showing you how to configure one side of it. The other side of it is your physical switches, and they have to be configured properly as well, or you're kidding yourself, it can't work. It all has to match. What we're trying to do with link aggregation control protocol is combine multiple physical links into one logical link. So all of the multiple physical links that I'm going to pull together have to be the same speed, the same duplex, the same kinds of settings. Everything has to match. And the idea is that I'm setting up multiple physical links into one logical link that doesn't have any single points of failure, so that I can use it both for load balancing, because it's actually increasing throughput by having the multiple physical links, and also it's used for fault tolerance, because if one piece of it fails, well, there's still the other pieces that are already there. That's the key. It's not like something else has to fail over. It's already there. It may be weaker, it may be has less throughput because it doesn't have as many physical pieces, but it's already there. So link aggregation control protocol can be a very useful way to use your links, but you have to configure both sides properly. The other thing I want you to understand is that it's different in its configuration in 5.1 and 5.5. In 5.1, VMware was just introducing the concept. And so what they did is they allowed you to take an uplink group and enable LACP on it. And you could only do one in a vSphere switch. Now you can create multiple link aggregation groups. And I'll show you how to do that in 5.5 later on. So what I'm going to show you right now is how to do it on 5.1. So that brings us to this DV switch. The DV switch that I'm on is in fact version 5.5, as you can see. But it wasn't always version 5.5. I actually upgraded it from 5.1 to 5.5, and it didn't get all of the capability of a brand new born 5.5 vSphere distributed switch. So if you have vSphere distributed switches in your organization and you're thinking about using link aggregation control protocol, then the way that I'm going to show you right now is the way that you go with this. If on the other hand you're at 5.5 and you have a switch that was actually created with 5.5 as 5.5, then I'll show you the difference there. So on this switch, just called DV switch, because I like to leave the native name so it's easier for you to see what's going on, I'm going to go to the natively named uplink group, right, called DV uplinks. In this case, just the default 107 group that, it picked that number. So this is an uplink group that the vSphere distributed switch owns, that contains the VM NICs that are actually part of the hosts that are connected to the vSphere distributed switch. It's important for you to kind of visualize that. The only real VM NICs, the only real NICs that are actually connected to the environment are on the hosts. But when you connect the host to the vSphere distributed switch, it owns those NICs. So I'm going to configure it. So what I'm going to do is look at its policies and look at the link aggregation control policy status. And it's disabled. So it doesn't know how to do what we've just been talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Edit. And then I'm going to go to Link Aggregation Control Policy, and I'm going to enable it. Now, before I click on OK, I want you to see what it says in the information section here. It says, to properly enable link aggregation control policy, all port groups backed by this uplink port group must have their load balancing set to IP hash load balancing. See, that's interesting because that's not the default setting. We'll look at that in just a minute. And the network failure detection policy should be set to link status only, no problem there. And then all the uplinks are set to active. So now I'm going to click on OK. Now in essence what I've done is I've made that uplink group a link aggregation group now. And I could change the name if I wanted to. Right now I'm not going to worry about doing that. I want to show you what it was talking about a port group that's backed by that. So I'm going to go to this port group, which is also on this distributed virtual switch, so it's backed by that uplink group. And what I want to do is look at its policies. And you notice that the teaming and failover, right, the load balancing, is set to route based on IP hash. That's what it needed to be. That wasn't the default, but in this case I had my uplink port set properly because I had it set properly for another thing that I was working on. But what I want you to understand, if I click on edit here and then I were to click on teaming and failover, this is where you'd set this. If yours was set to the default, which is route based on originating virtual port, then you would want to set it to route based on IP hash. Network failure detection is set to link status only, and look at the active links. Look at all the links are active. So I've met all the requirements for that side of it. And again, I may want to right click on that uplink and just rename it. Rename it to link aggregation group or whatever makes sense to me for whatever I'm doing with it. But that's the way you do it for the 5.1 environment. Now, what do you do for the 5.5 environment? What's the enhancement? We'll take a look at that next.